everybody. We have had some questions about basic operations on the ScanNCut, and I know many of you know that the USB Watch Learn Create is out there. That tells you everything that you need to know for the CM series, but I wanted to just go through one or two of the things on the SDX for you as well, just to cover that off. The USB will help you learn your SDX. It's just navigating as to where those buttons are, that's all. So once you find them, you're away. So the first question that I have my little book here, so I don't go off piste. An overview of the alignment tool. So alignment is one of the things that I use a lot, and I mean a lot. So this is a really good one to get started with. I'm going to work on the SDX 1200. It's in the same place on both SDXs. So we'll get started. So the first thing I want to do is bring on some shapes that we can align. All right. So I'm going to go into patterns and into basic shapes, and I'm just going to choose a square. I'm going to ask it to do 2 of them, and I'm going to set them on the mat. And I'm going to make one slightly bigger than the other. So I go into edit because we're changing the shape, and then object edit because we're changing the object. So we're going to go into there, and I'm just going to go to the resize button, and I'm going to make it bigger. All right, so we've got 2 different sizes of squares. So this is where the alignment comes in. So I'm going to press OK and come off that screen. And to align something, you have to select more than one shape. So right now, the alignment button there is grayed out because it's not available, because you can't align one shape with itself. There needs to be more than one shape. So we come out and we press OK. And the first thing we need to do is select both of those squares. So to do that, we go to the 3 red squares, which is the multiple select button. We're going to select everything that's on the mat. So the image of the complete mat with the red square around it, we're going to click on that. And then we're going to come off that screen because we're finished on there. So we're going to tell it OK. Now to find your alignment function on this screen, you can either go into Object Edit and it's there, or you can go to your directional arrow buttons and it's there, whichever you feel more comfortable with. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't change anything. It's just there's 2 different ways of finding where it is. So when we go to the alignment function at the top, we have these options, and these top 6 are the ones that I use more than any others. That one is kind of when you've got lots and lots of shapes going on, but this one, these top 6 I'm going to go through. So you will see on the left-hand side of this box, you've got a straight line. You've got the same straight line on the right-hand side of that one, at the top of that one, the bottom of that one, in the centre vertically, and in the centre horizontally. That's where your shapes will align to. So if we do to the left, first of all, you'll see that they both move to the left-hand side. If we do to the right, it moves it over to the right-hand side. To the top, it's already at the top, so it's not going to change it. To the bottom, it will move it down to the bottom. To the centre, vertically, and then to the centre horizontally. So if you want to make a frame, like we've just done there, you will select everything that's on the mat and you will align it centrally vertically and centrally horizontally. All right, so that basically is your alignment function. And it just makes lining up things much, much easier than trying to gauge where it is and guess where it is in the middle. It just means that you can align it backwards. And when we take you into Canvas Workspace in a little while, it means that if you're moving an outside shape to group all the detail in the middle, if it's a symmetrical shape, when you come to align it back, that's a much quicker way of guessing where it is. All right. So just to show you something else with that, if I tap the screen now, because it's still selected until I tell it that I want it otherwise. So for example, if we bring that up there and we go to edit and we go to object edit and we want to put a circle in the middle of there. So we come out, sorry, I'm going a bit round the houses there. We add and we bring on a pattern and we bring on a circle. And we make that smaller. We set it on the mat. I want to now put that in the middle of there, but I might need this for something else. So imagine you've got more than 2 shapes on and you just want to align 2. So you make sure that one of the ones that you're going to work with, so one of the ones that you're going to align is selected, and you go to edit and you multiple select part of the mat this time. And as soon as you drag an arrow over a shape, it ignores it because it can't see it as a shape anymore. So it thinks it's gone, it's disappeared. It's like putting a piece of copy paper over it for it. So when I press OK, it will still only highlight those 2 and it will ignore that. We're then going to press OK and we're going to go to our alignment function, and we just align that centrally vertically, centrally horizontally. It didn't move then because I must have been really clever at getting that more or less in the bang on in the middle. But if I did it to the top, for example, or the centre again, or the right hand side or the left hand side, you can see then that it just puts it back into position. And then all you do to cut that as a frame is keep pressing OK until you get to Object Edit, and you group that together. And you've then got your circle aperture for your front of your project. So that really is an overview of the alignment function, and I use it a lot. And even with things like words. So let's say, for example, let's just do one more thing with it. Let's say you wanted to do happy birthday. So if you go into patterns and into your fonts, and let's do it in this font, for example, and I'm going to do it as 2 words. So happy, and set that on the mat, and then add, and then go back in and let's choose a different font because we can. Let's do that one, and we'll do birthday. And set that on the mat. If I want to align those 2 to make sure that the happy and the birthday is, or the happy's in the middle of the birthday, what I would do first of all is just drag that down roughly, and then I would make sure that I've got the space in here that I want. So I can drag it down a little bit or up a little bit depending on what I want. And if you find it difficult to drag with any kind of precision, use your directional arrow buttons and that will move it up and down perfectly. So then we're going to do the same thing, multiple select everything that's on the mat, press OK, go to your directional arrow buttons because we're going to move it and we're going to align it, and you just align it centrally vertically. And then you can then come out and Object Edit and group that, and then make it all smaller at the same time. So you know that all your words are lined up. So you might have a whole phrase, happy birthday to you on your special day. That's how you make sure that they're all aligned, okay? So that's your alignment function. Right, let's come out of that and let's go to our home button and see what the next question is. So the next one is grouping and welding patterns. So let's do grouping first. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to do one of the, let's do one of the applique shapes because this is quite a good way of showing you how this works. Let's just do a basic one. So this one, for example, at this point you can change the size of this, and when you press OK, it's changed the size. So I'm going to add A and press OK and set that on the mat, and then going to add, and it automatically goes back to that pattern. Now it doesn't do it on all of them, but it does it on the applique and any patterns that are in the machine's memory that have several layers. It will go back. So unlike a USB where you're adding extra information, the shapes that are in the machine's memory will automatically go back to that pattern so you can add the next layer. Okay, so we're going to add layer B, and then we're going to add, and we're going to add that final layer there. Okay, now if I want to, at this point, I suddenly think, oh, I wanted to make that bigger or smaller. Rather than going back and starting again, you can do this. So we're going to use our alignment function in this as well. So we're going to go to Edit, and we're going to multiple select everything that's on the mat, press OK, and we're going to align it first. So we're going to put everything on top of each other and in the center, so that when I've grouped it, I know that the biggest shape is the outside edge, if you like. So I know that everything's on top of each other. If I do this now, let me show you. It's easier to show you than it is to tell you. If I group that now and make it smaller, I actually don't know how big my finished shape is because it's taking the width from the right hand side of that shape and the left hand side of that shape. If I ungroup that and I align them first, so I go multiple select, everything on the mat, press OK. What I'm doing with my alignment now is I'm putting them in a pile. So I'm putting them on top of each other like that, so that when I group it, I know that the main shape, the base shape, is going to be the biggest one. So you then just go into your resize and you make it smaller, or you make it bigger, and everything resizes in the correct ratio. I hope that makes sense. So that's how you would group a shape. So if you want to resize something or you want to change something, you group it first. That means that you can move it. And we've had a lot of people ask over the years about the tattered lace USBs. So sometimes we leave the shapes ungrouped and sometimes we group the outside edge with it. It depends on the versatility that's within that shape. So I've had people say, I'm moving my shape and it's just the outside edge that's moving. You need to group it first. That's how you do it. And you will know. So if I ungroup this and just tap that screen, if there is only one shape, so let me get rid of some of these shapes. If there's only one shape on the mat, that multiple select isn't available. And I can't group one shape because it's one shape. So it's already its own little group, if you like. It's just a single shape. As soon as I add another shape on, so let's put that one back in, and I go to edit, that is then available. So you know instantly, without even trying to group, if that is greyed out, you've got a single shape or a single image. If it's highlighted, there's more than one part to that shape. So you group it to move it or resize it. Okay, that makes sense. The next one is welding. Right, welding is slightly different to grouping. So grouping is putting one select box around lots of different shapes. Welding is where you're almost gluing two shapes together. All right, so it's like sewing two pieces of fabric or gluing two pieces of card. They have to be overlapped. You can't weld them without them being overlapped. All right, so for example, let's do just a basic weld of let's do a scallop circle card base. So let's choose a scallop. I'm going to make it a bit bigger and we'll ask for to do two of them. Okay, so it puts them side by side. So what we need to do is move these over the top of each other slightly so that they're overlapping. So to do that, you go to edit, and this is your directional arrow buttons, and I like to do it this way because then I know it's symmetrical. So I'm going to have the right one highlighted, I'm going to move it across, let's say 6 spaces, and it's worth having the beep on when you do this because you know subconsciously you hear that beep. If it's off, you don't know how many times you've pressed it. All right, so I've got 6 and 6. I've done exactly the same amount of spaces on each one of those circles, but going in different directions. So now we're going to do exactly the same thing again. And the more you do things like this, the more you get used to your ScanNCut, because it is repetitive and it just becomes second nature. So we now multiple select everything on the mat because both of those shapes need to be involved in the welding process. We then press OK and we go into Object Edit. And this button here that looks like a keyhole is actually a triangle that is overlapping a circle. So that's weld. So we click on that and it will then weld that together. Okay. So then we've got our shaped card. So then you can save that. And every time you want a scallop circle card blank, you can just make it smaller or bigger. So welding is all about overlapping. Think of welding as gluing. Okay, so you're gluing two pieces of card together. If I had 2 pieces of card like this, I can't glue that to that without doing that and overlapping it. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle or wherever it is, I can't do it. I can't glue it without it overlapping. So that's the way to do that, okay? Another important thing I want to talk to you about, and I'll do more of this when I go into Canvas Workspace, is how the machine sees a pile of shapes. So if you've got something like a tattered lace doily, you see it as a doily. So you see it as an outside shape with all the detail on the inside, almost punched out, don't you? So you see all that detail as little apertures. The machine doesn't see it like that. The machine sees it as a pile. So it sees your solid shape, and on top of it are all the other shapes. That's how it sees it. And when you understand that bit, you'll then start to understand a bit more about how canvas works and how welding works. And it's important that you know that, because if I tried to take a tattered lace doily and weld it to another tattered lace doily, it would weld the outside edges, but it won't weld the detail because it can't, because it's not overlapping, because it sees it as lots of individual shapes. So it will just weld the shapes that are overlapping, which will be your outside edges. But when we go into Canvas Workspace, I'm going to teach you how you can make the changes on some of the shapes. You can't always do it, but I would say probably 75% of the time you can, all right? So I just wanted to talk about that while we're on welding on the machine. So the next one is drawing with a standard pen and pen holder. That's really easy. So it doesn't matter which machine you've got, whether it's a CM machine or whether it's an SDX machine, it works in exactly the same way. You can even put your standard blade housing with the standard blade in from your CM machines into here. You can't put that one into the CM because it's an auto blade sensor. So there's no settings on this blade. So if I show you that blade, it doesn't have any numbers round. So you wouldn't know, you wouldn't be able to set that at 6, for example. So this only works in the SDX, but your standard one from your CM will go in here. And I must admit, when I'm doing things like vinyl, or I'm doing specific things like Fleurs flower forming foam or felt, and I want it to cut in one pass, I do it with my standard blade. Because what this machine does is read the depth of something. And if it reads the depth of, say, wool felt and it's 3 mil, it might cut it 3 times. That's not beneficial on felt, because what happens is that it frays it, because it's fluff, it almost frays that fluff and it doesn't give you a clean edge. So I always cut felt with my standard blade housing from my CM machines. So if you're an SDX user and you haven't got one of those, I would treat yourself to one of those, because it does come in handy. It's the same with Fleurs. Because Fleurs is thin, well, it's not thin like a piece of paper, it's probably about 1 mil in thickness. It wants to cut it a couple of times, but it doesn't need 2 cuts. Fleurs will cut in one pass. So then you risk the Fleurs coming away from the mat and getting damaged in that second cut. So I use my standard blade housing. It's interesting, I would always encourage people to learn the settings for their machine rather than just going, oh, I'll just buy an SDX, because it's always worth knowing what those settings are. And what I'll do is I'll put a little list together of the things like Fleurs and felt, the things that I use a standard blade housing for. I'll put it together and we'll put it on our social media sites just so that you can see what it is. Because there are times, I mean, this is amazing. You know, if you're a beginner and you don't want to learn your machine, that's an amazing tool. But I do like the fact that I've learnt my CM machine, because I know instantly what I need to use it for. So I'll do that for you. Right, so pen and pen holder. I'm not going to draw anything because it's just, there's no point in drawing anything. It's just how this works. So this is the one that will come with your SDX. I think it comes with the 1200. I don't think it comes with the 900 at the moment. I say at the moment because you never know, we may put it in with the deal, I don't know. But as standard, I don't think it comes with it. So this is your regular Brother pen holder, and it just takes the Brother pens. So you will get in the pen set, please excuse my nail. I've been working with ink lily pens this morning and I've got permanent pen on my nail. So what this is the one that just takes the Brother pens. So in the pack of pens, you get 6 colour pens, which are water-based for your drawing or your sentiments. And you also get 2 erasable pens. You get a purple one and a blue one. The purple one is air erasable, so it will fade. And the blue one is water soluble, so when you wash your fabric, it will wash out. And the reason they give you those is because when you cut quilt blocks on this, it will draw it on to the fabric with your pen, and then it will cut it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance if you set it up to do so. So that's why you've got the fabric pens in there as well. So all you're going to do is press, there's a little button on the back, press that, and that opens up the back of your pen holder. So if you see there, it's not like a proper little button that clicks. It's just a small part of it that you press, and that flips the lid up. Okay, just there. So you just press that, the lid flips up. You then drop your pen in and you close it down. And there is somewhere, see, I've already lost my lid off my pen. There you go. There is at the top. You can actually pop that in there and it just fits in there. All right. So you've got, that's how you put your pen in. So you're going to drop that in there and just push the grey bar down. And then it's exactly the same thing as you would if you were selecting a shape. So let's just go into patterns and let's choose one of the words that are already in there. Let's go into the words and sentiments, anniversary. Now we talk about when we're cutting a 3mm turning point that's needed for the ScanNCut. Doesn't apply when you're drawing because it's not a blade. It's not going in and having to meet itself coming back out. So you can go really small with your drawing on ScanNCut. It has there's no limits really. Obviously if you go down to 1mm, you're not going to see very much, but it's there, okay? So if I set that on the mat, all you then do to resize it again is go into edit and object edit and make it smaller or bigger. So I can go down really small, like that small if you want to. Actually, I'm going to draw that for you because I want you to see how good it is. Please excuse the next noise. It's just better whipping it off. Just get it over with. I'm just going to pop this on. Now I've got a low tack mat on here because this is a brand new mat. I'm not going to press down very hard at all. But let's say you wanted to just do this as a press OK and then it will allow me to move it. Now if you've struggled to grab like this, go into your directional arrows, so come out of there and go into here and move it with ease. And this happens if you work like I do. If you work at home with you and your machine's in front of you and you're doing that, it's fine because your stylus is going on straight like that, okay? If you're working on the sideways, what you can do is almost push the screen calibration out slightly. So just try and make sure that you're working from the front and then that will allow me to move that across. All right, so I'm going to move that over there like that. I'm going to press OK and we're going to draw this now. So we get to the screen where we want please select, and instead of pressing cut, we press draw. And it's as simple as that. Now you can in here change the draw speed and the draw pressure. The speed I'm going to take up because I would never have it drawing that slowly. If I was on my CM machine, I probably would. And the reason for that is because it had the static rollers in the CM machines, you can't lift them. So you want to make sure that you're not getting any ink on the rollers and it's dragging it through your project. There is a way to trick the machine into drawing from the bottom up. And to do that on your CM machines, you press the foil function and you press the glue button and it draws it like it does when it's putting the glue out of the pen. It draws it from the bottom up. And the barcode on the back of your foiling housing, your glue pen housing, is the same as your universal pen holder and as this pen holder. So it will draw it from the bottom up. So there are ways of tricking it into doing that. But on your SDX, it will prompt you when you're doing any drawing to lift the back rollers, so it takes away that issue at all, okay? So I'm going to draw pressure. The lighter the pressure, the thinner the line will be. So I would say the smaller you go, set the pressure to a negative, all right? So I'm going to take this down to a negative pressure and try pressure -4 and see how fine the line is. And if you want it thicker, you can increase the pressure. You can also add additional lines on as well. So if you want a thicker line and you're working with something like a fine liner where you don't want to put too much pressure on that because it will push the fibre nib back into the barrel, you can add additional lines, and I'll show you that after I've drawn this, all right? So all we're going to do then is press OK, and it's set now on that mat. So I'm going to load the mat in. So we're going to take our mat, put it up to the machine, press the load button, I'm going to make sure that the lever's down because I want you to see that it prompts you. So when I press start, it's now telling me that the scanner lever is set to position 1 and it wants me to move it to position 2. And what position 2 does is it lifts these back rollers here. You won't be able to see them, but you'll be able to see them in your machine. It lifts them up. So it means that those rollers aren't going to go through the ink, so it doesn't matter where you draw on the mat, it's not going to spread it across the actual project itself. So then I'm just going to do draw and start. Right, now that is teeny tiny. I think that is phenomenal, but it's not very clear, and it's not very clear because it's so small and you're working with, in essence, a bullet nib pen. So I would say if you're going to go that small, I want you to use your Ink Lily fine liners because they fit in. You're going to need a little bit of masking tape because it's a universal pen holder and you need it to grip that pen. So I've used masking tape, which is what Brother might recommend around the bottom of your pen. But that is amazing, isn't it, for a machine to do that? So I'm going to show you another thing that it will do. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger first of all. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go to Edit and Object Edit and into my Resize button, and I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. I'm going to move it over because I've already used this space. That is amazing because you can read it close up. It just gets a little bit, it's a bit too small. And would you actually have anniversary that small on a card? Probably not. But this one is really cool. So let me show you this. So when we go into here, you've got this function here. And this is what they call a fill function. So if I put that on and I switch the fill on, it's going to colour it in for me. That sounds bonkers, doesn't it? The fill line spacing I can set, so I want to line every 0.1 mil. So it's going to be a really nice dense colour. And I want the fill direction to be completely horizontal. So I'm going to set that to 180 degrees. And that's all you need to do. And then I'm going to put this in. I'm going to load my mat in. And I'm going to come out of there because I switched it on, and I'm going to ask it now to draw it again. So I'm going to press OK, keep going till I get to please select, ask it to draw, and then start. It's going to take 3 minutes or thereabouts, but you know what, it's fascinating. And what I love about this is when I first went to meet the team of the Brother team in Manchester, when we first looked at bringing this machine on board, and they said to me, you know, we already had this technology because we do printers. That's what we do. That's what we've done for decades. We've done printers. And this is what would carry your ink cartridge across, or something very similar to that. So they already had that technology available to them. Scanner, you know, they already sell scanners. That's what Brother do. My home office at home has a Brother printer and a Brother scanner in it. So it's really interesting that they already had it. They just didn't know how to make that for the craft market. And originally the ScanNCut was going to be for fabric, but they couldn't get the cut right on it. So paper crafters took it, and now the fabric just cuts amazingly on it now. It really is very, very good. But you need to know again about your settings on that. Although on here, on the SDX, it will automatically work it out. But I would absolutely recommend using the fabric blade for fabric. Don't mix and match the two, because the fabric blade is much finer and it's made specifically for that use. So if you've got if they've got the SDX 900 that doesn't come with the fabric blade and you want to use it for your fabric, please buy one, because it's a different league than using your regular paper blade. That will cut it, won't cut it as well as the fabric one. So all it's doing now is it's working its way along and it's filling in all those spaces. And what's really good about this is if you draw it first and get it to colour it in like we're doing now, and then at the end you use your back arrow and you remove the fill function, it will then do you an outline. So you could do an outline in a different colour and it will look like you've coloured it in. It's so clever. And I can sit and watch this for ages because it fascinates me. Look how fast it's going. And that's not even on its fastest speed. It is brilliant, and it just makes me smile when I watch it because it's like it's working really, really hard and it's doing all this. It's very clever, and you can see on the screen the time that it's got left is going down. I love it. I love this function. So if you just want all the sentiments are outlines, and if you think, oh, I'd love that coloured in, or I'd want it in black or whatever, rather than sitting there and painstakingly colouring it yourself, the machine will do it for you. It just makes me smile. There we go. And that pen's a little bit worn out, but there we've got anniversary, right? You can see that quite well there. So if I take that out now, if I took that out and put another pen in, and I went to OK and back, don't unload it, just go OK and back, and go to Edit, and go into Object Edit, and go back into your fill function and turn that off, I could then put another colour in and it would just draw around the outline. It's cool, that, isn't it? Now, while I'm here, I want to show you the additional line function. So I'm just going to press Home and get rid of that shape. So if you wanted to draw a circle, for example, or a square, and you want it to be thicker, when you have a fine liner, you can get, because Ink Lily now are doing their own fine liners, we've gone up to a 10. So we've gone up to quite a thick nib, which is great. But if you wanted a finer one, say a 5, I wouldn't go much below a 4, to be honest. With a fine liner, the more pressure you put on to get a thicker line, the more likely it is to damage that nib. So if you've got a square and you want to draw it with a fine liner, if you go to Edit and Object Edit, this button here, this triangle, you can see it's thicker on one side than it is on the other. So if I click on that, it will allow me to do up to 2 additional lines. So first thing you're going to do is switch it on and tell it that that's what you want to activate. And then you can tell it up to 2 additional lines. But the clever bit is you can set the distance between those 2 lines. So if you wanted it to be like a square with another square on the outside, you could take it up to 1 mil. So you can have anything up to, what does it go up to? Let me have a look. Wow, it goes up quite far actually. That's good. So you could do some really nice techniques with that. I bet it will stop at 10 maybe, or 9. Yeah, 9.9. So you've got 99 different options. So if you wanted to have a really nice drawn fine line and then another one a fraction of a millimetre out, how else would you do that? The machine will allow you to do that, okay? So I'm going to drop that right back down. That'll be really cool to do some techniques. I'm going to have a play with that when I go home. So right back down to 0.1 millimetre. And what that will do is it will get it to draw the square or the circle, and then it will move out 0.1 mil, and it'll draw again, and then move out and draw again, and it will give you a thicker line. So if you're using fine liners, please don't just add more pressure to them, because also what it does is, because it's a fibre tip, when a lot of it doing that, when it's colouring in, it'll flatten the nib, and then when you start to try and write with it, you'll have like a sharp edge on it. Not sharp that it will cut you, but a more of a harsh edge, so you won't get that free flow. So I would absolutely add additional lines rather than putting more pressure on, okay? And that's how you do that. But it's just all those little things that you can do. And like I said, if you get the STX 1200, the pens come with it. Otherwise, you can buy these separately. My advice would be, if I'm really honest, if you've got an STX 900 and you haven't got this, I would just buy a universal pen holder, because then you can put a lot of pens in. So you can go from a pencil or even a triangular shaped pen and wrap masking tape around it. And when you look on the universal pen holder packaging, it shows you where to put the tape. And then you use the grip to grip onto the pen, And you can go from anything from a really unusual shaped pen, or quite a fine pen, like an Ink Lily gel pen, right through to up to an ultra fine Sharpie. It doesn't take the regular Sharpies, but it takes the ultra fine ones, and anything in between. So I wouldn't actually buy that if it hasn't come with your machine. I would put that money that you would spend on that into a universal pen holder, because you'll get a lot more use out of it. That's just me being really, really honest. I wouldn't buy that. I would buy the other one, because you can get erasable pens for your fabric, and rather than buying a little one, you can buy one that's going to last you longer. So that would be my advice on that one. All right, so that's drawing with your ScanNCut. Let's take that out and just show you that anniversary. There we go. Isn't that clever? I think that pen's on its way out, to be fair, but it's done a pretty good job to say that that's the result. All right, so that's that. What's next? Let's have a look. Scanning to USB, scanning operations, scan to USB. All right, so scan to USB, there's nothing mystical about it. We don't do it on air because it's pointless, because it doesn't teach you anything. If you haven't got a scanner at home and you want one, you've got one in here. That's what scan to USB is all about. So we've been asked specifically about that, so I'm going to talk about that. So if we're going to scan, you've got direct cut. So if I drew an image on here now and I scanned it into direct cut, it would find the outside edge and it would cut it out, but it wouldn't save it into the machine's memory. Scan to cut data is where you scan something to create cutting data, which is cutting files. So if I drew a flower and I scan to cut data, it will cut it out, and it will save it into the machine's memory, so I can go back to that design again. That's where, if you've got a stamp and you want to cut it out, you need to use direct cut. If you've got a stamp and you want to save it into the machine's memory, you must ask the designer or the company that you bought it from for whether they accept that, whether they're happy for you to do that. It's a copyright issue. So anything at all that comes out of Innovation Hub, so Rare Earth, Ink Lily, Tattered Lace, anything like that, you can scan in, save, and do, make it bigger, smaller, whatever you want. But other companies, I need you to ask first, please, because that's the right thing to do. Scan to USB is if you wanted to scan in a document or a photograph or anything that you would normally scan in and save it onto a USB key. You will find a compatible USB key now on Create and Craft's website, thank goodness, eventually. Or if you type in a search engine, compatible USBs for ScanNCut, it will come up with a list. It's a literal list. So if it says a brand and then 8 gig, but it doesn't say 16, don't buy a 16 because it won't accept it. So the one that we've got on the Create and Craft website is a 4 gig. Personally, I would rather have more USBs that have a smaller amount of memory, because if you load up a 16 gig, every time you access that USB, it has to load it all. So it takes time. So I have most of mine are 4 gig, and I just keep them on there. But we do now sell one, and then you would just literally put your document on here or your photograph, scan it in, it will save it to the USB, and then you can put your USB in your computer and print off your photograph. That's all it's there for. There's nothing mysterious about it. We just never talk about it because it's not something that we can teach you to do. It just means that your ScanNCut is your scanner. Scan to Canvas Workspace, that's not a thing, it's not an option, but I'm going to show you how to send a file from here into Canvas Workspace and back again in the next video. So I think we've covered all the questions that we've got on the list so far. Don't forget, and this is of no benefit to me whatsoever, so don't think I'm trying to sell you this for the sake of it. The Watch, Learn, Create USB is available and should be available until everybody buys it and it goes out of stock on the Create and Craft website. And the reason I did it was because I wanted to teach you everything that I've learned so far about the ScanNCut. And the best way to do that was on a USB that you could buy and you could sit at home and watch in the comfort of your own home. And it's not for my benefit. I didn't do it because I wanted to show off about what I know. I did it so that I could teach you and so that you could learn everything, warts and all. You can, when I've gone wrong, it shows it on there. When I show you everything that I've learned, all the good stuff, all the bad stuff, all the mistakes, is in that USB. So that when you get it out of the box and you watch it, you can start from where I am at, all right? So if you don't want to buy it, fine. But if you do, you will find that there is a lot on there that you can learn. It is filmed on the CM900. I'm not going to shy away from that because this wasn't out when I filmed it. But a lot of what you learn translates to this. It's just navigation is a little bit different on this machine than it is on the CM. So it's up to you, whichever way you choose to learn, via little snippets like this or on the USB, it's up to you. So thank you for watching. I'm going to go and set up my iPad now, and then we'll come back and we'll do some work on Canvas.